Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Are you completely exhausted by endless email chains, constantly missed deadlines, and projects that feel like they're just held together by duct tape? Well, today we're incredibly excited to dive in and demystify the world's most popular agile framework, which was designed to solve exactly that: Scrum. Look, whether you're building complex software, managing IT requests, or even coordinating a massive cross-functional marketing campaign, Scrum has absolutely revolutionized how teams organize and execute their work. We're going to break down its core mechanics, its roles, and its events, giving you a crystal clear understanding of how this entire framework drives continuous delivery and unparalleled team alignment.
But to really grasp Scrum, we've got to start with its absolute beating heart. It's perfectly captured in this famous quote from the Agile Manifesto: individuals and interactions over processes and tools. Before we even touch the rules and the structures, we have to establish that Agile is fundamentally about putting people first. It's about trusting motivated individuals, fostering actual face-to-face conversations, and creating an environment where collaboration genuinely thrives. Because honestly, if you lose sight of the people, no amount of process is ever going to save you.
Okay, let's dive into this real quick because it's a super common misconception. People use the words Agile and Scrum interchangeably all the time, right? But they actually aren't the same thing. Agile is a broad, guiding philosophy. It's a mindset that's all about continuous, incremental improvement and being able to respond to change. Scrum, on the other hand, is a specific, lightweight framework that you use to actually execute that Agile philosophy. It's highly practical and it's built on two core concepts. First up is empiricism. I know, fancy word, but what does it mean? It just means making decisions based on what you actually observe and experience in the real world, instead of what you simply hoped would happen. And second is lean thinking, which focuses intensely on stripping away waste and dialing in on the bare essentials.
Which brings us to a really relatable question. How do you actually manage complex problems without creating total chaos? Think about traditional project management, like the old waterfall model. You try to predict absolutely everything up front. But in a complex world where requirements are changing overnight and unknowns totally outnumber the knowns, those rigid plans just fall apart. It leads to missed deadlines and widespread frustration for everybody. Scrum offers this beautifully structured alternative to all that chaos. It completely replaces the illusion of perfect prediction with the reality of continuous adaptation.
So, here is our mental scaffolding for today. We're going to explore exactly how Scrum organizes work by walking through these 5 areas. 1. Scrum theory. 2. The Scrum team. 3. Artifacts and commitments. 4. The 5 Scrum events. And finally, mastering continuous improvement.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, Scrum Theory, the Foundation of Empiricism.
Listen, Scrum doesn't rely on blind guessing, it relies on reality. When your work is highly complex, the only way to actually succeed is to take a step, observe the result, and then figure out the next step based on real data. That empirical approach is held up by 3 unbreakable pillars. First is transparency. The work and the process literally have to be visible to everyone involved. You can't hide problems. Second is inspection. You got to frequently check your progress and your product to catch any weird, undesirable variances early on. And third is adaptation. If you find a problem during that inspection, you must adjust the process or the product right away. Just remember, transparency is what enables inspection. And, as the Scrum Guide points out, inspection without adaptation is considered totally pointless.
So, how do we actually put these 3 pillars into practice every day? Well, it all boils down to a fantastic cognitive hook known as the 3-5-3 rule.
The 3-5-3 rule breaks down just like this. There are exactly 3 roles representing the who. There are 3 artifacts representing the what that's being built or planned. And there are 5 events representing the how, the regular rhythm of collaboration that makes the whole machine run. Honestly, if you can just memorize this simple 3-5-3 structure, you will instantly understand how to operate within any Scrum team in the world.
Moving right along to Section 2, the Scrum team, the who.
The fundamental unit of Scrum is a small, cross-functional team of 10 or fewer people. And crucially, there are 0 internal hierarchies. Let's look at the 3 accountabilities inside this unit, starting with the product owner. This person is the ultimate champion of the product. And they aren't just a traditional requirements taker or an order taker for stakeholders. No, they are accountable for maximizing the value of the product that results from the team's work. They do this by developing a clear product goal and explicitly managing the product backlog, which is basically the dynamic, ordered to-do list of everything that might ever be needed in the product. So the crucial point here is that the product owner is exactly one person, not a committee, not a shared responsibility, just one person. They represent the definitive voice of the customer and the business. If anybody in the entire organization wants to change the priority of the work, they have to convince this one individual. And that ensures the development team always has crystal clear, unified guidance.
Next up, we have the Scrum Master. It's absolutely vital to understand that the Scrum Master is not a traditional project manager who assigns out daily tasks. Instead, they're true leaders who serve the team. They are accountable for the team's overall effectiveness. They do this by coaching team members in self-management, facilitating Scrum events, and most importantly, causing the removal of impediments or roadblocks that are slowing the team down. You can really think of them as the fierce guardians of the Scrum framework itself.
Finally, we have the developers. These are the cross-functional professionals who actually do the hands-on work. Now here's a really important note. Back in the 2020 update to the Scrum Guide, they deliberately shifted the term from development team to simply developers. Why? Because they wanted to eliminate that confusing team within a team dynamic and place far more emphasis on the entire Scrum team acting as one shared, cohesive unit. The developers are accountable for adapting their plan each day, instilling quality, and ultimately creating a usable increment of value.
Section 3. Scrum Artifacts and Commitments. The what?
These artifacts represent the actual work being created, and they're designed specifically to maximize transparency, so everyone has the exact same shared understanding of progress. And this brilliantly illustrates how the 2020 Scrum Guide completely streamlined this whole concept by strictly pairing each of the 3 artifacts with a very specific commitment. So the product backlog is tied to the product goal, providing a long-term target. The sprint backlog is tied to the sprint goal, giving the team a single, focused objective for their current iteration. And the increment, the actual working piece of the product, is tied to the definition of done, which is a formal description of the quality measures required. These commitments are there to constantly reinforce focus and empiricism.
Which leads us to Section 4, the 5 Scrum events, the how. These formal events are your built-in, scheduled opportunities to actually practice that transparency, inspection, and adaptation, completely eliminating the need for any other random, unorganized meetings. And the first event is the container for all the others, the sprint. I love to think of the sprint as the steady heartbeat of Scrum. It's a fixed-length event of 1 month or less where ideas are actively turned into value. A new sprint starts the literal second the previous one concludes. By keeping the iteration length fixed and super consistent, the team gets vital feedback on their estimation skills and delivery process, which makes them way more predictable over time. Inside that sprint container, we've got a chronological timeline of 4 critical ceremonies. We kick things off with sprint planning, where the entire team gets together to map out the why, what, and how for the upcoming sprint. Then, every 24 hours, the developers hold the daily scrum to inspect progress. At the end of the iteration, we have the sprint review to show off the completed work to stakeholders. And finally, the sprint retrospective, where the team looks inward to improve their own processes before the cycle starts all over again. Now, what's really interesting about this is that the daily scrum is strictly time-boxed to a maximum of 15 minutes. Its sole purpose is for the developers to inspect their progress toward the sprint goal and produce a highly actionable plan for the next 24 hours. Let me be clear, it is absolutely not a detailed status meeting for management. In fact, many teams are urged to do this meeting standing up. It's a great physical and psychological trick. If you're standing, you are so much more likely to keep the conversation short, focused, and straight to the point. Fast forward to the end of the sprint, and bam, we hit the sprint review. This is a fantastic event because it's time to celebrate accomplishments. The team showcases all the work that successfully met that definition of done to their stakeholders. But it's super crucial to understand that this is a working session, not just a one-way PowerPoint presentation. The goal is to get immediate, real-world feedback from the business and your customers, and then immediately use that feedback to adapt and update the product backlog for future sprints.
Finally, Section 5, Mastering Continuous Improvement, the why.
So after the product itself has been reviewed, the team actually has to review themselves. Welcome to the Sprint Retrospective. This is where the Scrum team takes a hard, honest look at how the last sprint went when it comes to individuals, interactions, processes, and tools. And they don't just sit around complaining about what went wrong, they use this time to find creative solutions and formulate highly actionable plans to increase quality and effectiveness. Those improvements are often added directly into the sprint backlog for the very next sprint. It really proves that continuous improvement is the actual engine that sustains an agile team.
Which leaves us with this final, incredibly provocative question.
Are you just building a product? Or are you continuously building better ways of working? That right there is the true magic of the Scrum framework. By embracing empiricism, genuinely empowering your people, and rigorously following that 3-5-3 rule, you aren't just managing complex tasks anymore. You're evolving a highly adaptable, practically unstoppable team. So, take these insights, apply them to your own workflows, and watch your team's agility absolutely soar. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.